Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Montera and today we will be discussing about the chapter 13 of our book, The Responsible Office, Corporations and Social Responsibility. This chapter is all about how business are just not profit-making machines but also responsible members of the society. Chapter helps us understand the different business structures and more importantly, it shows us how companies have ethical duties to society. It's not just economic goals. It's also about how corporations should act responsibly beyond the law. So what are the types of business structures or organizations? So there are different legal structures for businesses. The most common are sole proprietorship, which is owned by one person, partnership, owned by two or more, corporation, a separate legal entity from its owners. And okay, so now let's talk about what makes a corporation different. So corporations are treated like a legal person. And this means that they can own a property, they can enter and sign contracts and be sued or sue people, just like people. But with this power comes with great responsibility, not just to owners but also to the society. And why does it matter? Because corporations don't just exist to make money, they are accountable entities with social roles. Next is beyond making profit. So traditionally, businesses focus on profit, but this chapter says companies should also think about their social and ethical impact, like how they treat workers, protect the environment, and give back to the community. So, the bigger picture in beyond making a profit is sa karon no kay corporations have to consider the ethical behavior, treatment of workers, environmental protection and community involvement. And unsa man nato ma-learn ani niya. So being a successful company means doing good and not just doing well. So now let's talk about stakeholders. So ang kaning mga stakeholders are the people that are affected by the company. So these people include the employees, customers, local communities, government, and environment. So responsibility goes beyond the shareholders themselves. So companies must balance the needs of all of these groups. So kaning mga employees, customers, and local communities, because what happens to the company also happens and affects those people, kaning mga key stakeholders. Okay, now let's talk about the CSR. So what is a CSR? It is a corporate social responsibility. And what is it about? It is being accountable for actions, acting ethically and transparently, and contributing positively to the society, and not just avoiding illegal activities. So it's more than obeying the law. CSR, or corporate social responsibility, means doing what's right, not just what's legal. So we have to understand kung unsa ang role or unsa ni siya ang CSR. So what are the examples of CSR? Some examples of CSR are reducing carbon emissions, paying fair wages and ensuring safe workspace, helping local schools or charities, avoiding corruption and exploitation, and nganong makahelp man siya when the company does all these kanang actions. It builds trust and enhances reputation and creates a real impact. So mao na siya nga ang companies kay naagid siya or corporations naagid siya kanang great impact within the society. Okay, so now why does CSR matters? So it matters because it builds trust with the public, it encourages long-term successes, not just short-term profit, and it also helps prevent scandals and problems. And it shows that the business are part of the society and not above it, like I mentioned earlier. No nga naagi role, dako gyud ang role sa corporation or kaning nga business within the society. So CSR equals responsibility plus the reputation itself. So what are the challenges in CSR? So some companies struggle with CSR. They may see it as a cost or worry about sa ilahang profit and how it affects it. But study shows that ethical companies often perform better in the long run because people trust them more and support them. So, mo na nga importante gyud nga maging ethical jud ta. Okay, so now let's discuss regarding ethics versus law. So not everything legal is ethical. A company might follow the law but still act unfairly. For example, paying low wages might feel legal, but is it fair? Fair ba siya nga bayaran o very low or low wages ang employees? So, ethics helps guides business decisions that laws might not cover. So, ethics fills the gap and laws set the minimum. And ethics aim to be the better choice. So we always have to think about ethics gyud. Dapat ethical gyud ta when doing business. No. So what are the key takeaways nga atong ma-learn ani nga report? So corporations have legal power and social duties, and profit is important, but also it is a responsibility. And CSR isn't just avoiding bad behavior, it's about a positive impact, and ethics guide companies beyond the law. And a great business doesn't just make money, it makes a difference. So we always have to remember when we make a business, it's about helping other people gihapon in ways that we can, or in ways that the company or the corporation can, and that we are part of a society. And we should be ethical in everything that we do. And that will be all for my report today, and thank you for listening.
Good day, classmates. I am Sharing Grace Aton, the second reporter. So, for the next topic, let's move on to the three theories of corporate social responsibility. So, we have here learning objectives, which is to define and discuss the three main theories of corporate social responsibility. So broadly, there are three theoretical approaches to these new responsibilities, namely the corporate social responsibility or the CSR, second, the triple bottom line, and lastly is stakeholder theory. So as for the corporate social responsibility, it has two meanings. First, it's a general name for any theory of the corporation that emphasizes both the responsibility to make money and the responsibility to interact ethically with the surrounding community. And second, the corporate social responsibility is also a specific conception of that responsibility to profit while playing a role in broader questions of community welfare. So, in general, no, the conviction that corporations are not only legal entities with responsibilities, but also moral entities and they hold ethical obligations comparable to those of citizens in a society. The corporate social responsibility is composed of four obligations. So, as a specific theory of business ethics, a package of four obligations the corporations hold as an independent ethical actor in society. Their responsibilities are economic responsibility, legal responsibility, ethical responsibility, and the philanthropic responsibility. So as for the economic responsibility, no, the economic responsibility is simply to make money. No? Required by simple economics, this obligation is the business version of the human survival instinct. So companies that don't make profits are, in a modern market economy, doomed to perish. Next is the legal responsibility. So the legal responsibility is to adhere to rules and regulations from the word legal. Legal responsibility. So like the previous, this responsibility is not controversial. What proponents of CSR argue, however, is that this obligation must be understood as a proactive duty. That is, laws aren't boundaries that enterprises skirt and cross over if the penalty is low. Instead, responsible organizations accept the rules and a social good and make good faith efforts to obey not just the letter but also the spirit of the limits. So, this passage explains that businesses have a legal responsibility to follow rules and the regulations, but corporate social responsibility encourages them to go beyond just avoiding penalties. Instead of seeing laws as obstacles to get around, responsible companies should view them as part of the greater good and follow both the letter or the exact word and the spirit of the law, no? The intended purpose, kumbaga. And next is the ethical responsibility. So the ethical responsibility is to do what's right, even when not required by the letter or spirit of the law. So this is the theory's keystone obligation, and it depends on a coherent corporate culture that views the business itself as a citizen in society with the kind of obligations that citizenship normally entails. And lastly is the philanthropic responsibility. So the philanthropic responsibility is to contribute to society's project even when they're independent of a particular business, no? So for example lang, no, a lawyer driving home from work may spot the local children gathered around a makeshift lemonade stand, no, and sense an obligation to buy a drink to contribute to the neighborhood project, no. So similarly said, no, a law firm, no, may volunteer access to their offices for an afternoon um every year, no. So some local school children may take a field trip to discover what lawyer do all day. So this public acts of generosity represents a view that businesses, like everyone in the world, have some obligations to support the general welfare in ways determined by the needs of the surrounding community. Okay, next is the second theory of corporate social responsibility, which is the triple bottom line. You know, the triple bottom line is a form of corporate social responsibility dictating that corporate leaders tabulate bottom line results not only in economic terms, but also in terms of company effects in the social realm and with respect to the environment. So when we say tabulating bottom line result, no, it means organizing financial data, specifically the final profit or loss figure or the bottom line of the business into a structured table. So this process helps in comparing performance over time, analyzing trends, and making informed financial decisions. So there are two keys to this idea. First, the three columns of responsibility must be kept separate with results reported independently for each. And second, in all three of these areas, the company should obtain sustainable results. So how the balance is defined and achieved. So the notion of sustainability is very specific, and the intersection of ethics and economics. Sustainability means the long-term maintenance of balance. As elaborated by theorists including John Elkington, here's how the balance is defined and achieved economically, socially, and environmentally. So first, economic sustainability values long-term financial solidity over more volatile short-term profits, no matter how high. According to the triple bottom line model, large corporations have a responsibility to create business plans allowing stable and prolonged action. Second is the social responsibility. Values balance in people's lives and the way we live A world in which a few Fortune 500 executives are holding down millions a year, while millions of people elsewhere in the world are living on pennies a day can't go on forever. So, a fair trade movement fits this ethical imperative to shared opportunity and wealth. Developed and refined as an idea in Europe in the 1960s organization promoting fair trade as businesses, especially large producers in the richest company, to guarantee that suppliers in the impoverished nations receive reasonable payment for their goods and services even when the raw economic laws of supply and demand don't require it. And finally, no, the environmental sustainability will now be discussed by our next reporter, Miss Cabatanya. And thank you.
Hello, classmates. I will continue the topic that discussed earlier. So today we will talk about environmental sustainability. Ang environmental sustainability is based siya sa atong resources, the water, oil, air, and others are limited. So, di ba, nagka-deteriorate man ang ato environment and di ba, kung dili na to siya alagaan karon, ang future generations is wala dili na sila ka-experience of same quality like ours and dili na nila ma-appreciate ang ato environment and so ang kani siya is So what is siya is i-conserve nato ang atong mga resources o magitatag alternative para for the sustainability of it. Na- Now, we have a clear example of environmental negligence which is ang industrial pollution. So ang mga factories patakalan sila og dump sa ilang waste and asa man ay mapunta di ba sa mga rivers or asa nga lugar na maka-affect sa atong environment. So dili na nato makita ang results karon pero in the future grabe ang consequences na madawat nato sa kanang pollution. So, ang sustainability is dili lang siya sa individuals like us mag-apply, but it also is like, it also a corporate one. So, ang business dapat na sila initiative to to do things like i-reduce nila ang kanang pollution sa factory, sa vehicles, mga consumer products, and dapat sila mag-promote og mag-recycle sila, magkuhan sila og mga clean up drives and magngita sila og technology o mag-develop sila na kanang environment friendly na mga technologies. So, usay kalahian sa corporate social responsibility versus triple bottom line. So, corporate social responsibility is more American-driven and by the belief that business can transform society through innovation and progress, while triple bottom line is more European and focused on maintaining stability and preventing decline. So now we will talk about Ludditism. So kani sila is mga Luddites na sila sa 19th century. They are British textile workers. So tungkol sa usbong sa mechanized looms and mahadlok sila nga kanang mawagtahangan sila og trabaho, ang usa lang kuan kanang na sila issue nga gibuhat nga to the point nga kuan oppose gid kay na sila arang mechanized loom. So ang ilang gibuhat is gi-destroy nila ang mga factories o mga machineries. So today ang Ludditism is something na kanang if kanang dili sila mo i-reject nila ang technology tungod sa fear of change. Now we will talk about stakeholder theory. So kani siya gi-describe ni siya ni Edward Freeman as something na kanang kung sa CSR ni siya ang business usay obligasyon nila sa world. Pero ang kaning stakeholder theory is begins with the world and asks who is affected by the company's action, what rights do they have, what responsibilities can they impose on the business. Now, we have an example, which is a factory and its waste. So, sa corporate social responsibilities perspective ni siya, kay ang owner maoy responsible og dapat usaon niya pag-dispose sa iya properly dispose sa iyang industrial waste versus stakeholder theories perspective, which is ang community mo maapektuhan sa pollution and na sila'y rights sa clean air and clean water. So na sila'y rights pod to say something of how the factory operates. So, 'di ba kanang karon mo talk ta about stakeholder ethics. So, mostly ra ba ang ang mga business kay gusto gyud nila is i-maximize ang ilang financial profit. While ang kaning stakeholder ethics is mas focus sila in kanang maximizing human welfare. So, ang ilang ginabalance ang mga interest sa stakeholders and also ilang ilang approach pod nga gusto sila nga ang maka-benefit dili lang kay ang mga shareholders but also ang mga employees, customers, local communities, and the environment. So we will now talk about stakeholder ethics. So what is the role of stakeholder ethics? The stakeholder ethics focuses on the collective bottom line, meaning overall impact of the stakeholders. For the stakeholder ethics to work, transparency is the key. Stakeholders need full access to information about company decisions, risks, and consequences. With complete knowledge, stakeholders can make informed decisions about business practices. So who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are anyone who is affected or who can affect company's operations, like employees, customers, local communities, investors, shareholders, suppliers, and partners. Stakeholder theory requires corporate leaders to balance everyone's interest to maximize overall well-being. It also forces leaders to weigh these factors and find solution that maximizes benefits for all. Traditionally, ang business ra ba is only ga-focus lang sila to maximize ilang profits, ilang mga benefits sa ilang shareholders, ilang returns sa owners. Pero sa corporate social responsibilities expands this view, integrating ethical and societal concerns into the business decisions. So, dahil three key ang corporate social responsibility framework. First is ang corporate social responsibility theory. Next is the triple bottom line theory. And third is the stakeholder theory. Corporate social responsibility challenges businesses to think beyond profits and act with ethical and social awareness. CSR ensures business operate responsibly and sustainably. The triple bottom line approach balances profit, people, and the planet. Stakeholder theory includes all affected parties in business decisions. While the debate between profit-driven and socially responsible business models continues, ethical decision-making is increasingly crucial in today's corporate world.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lawrence Villaferte Helaga, and I'm here to discuss Chapter 13.3, The Externality Argument. The externality argument. The second kind of argument, an externality in the economic world, is a cost of a good or service that isn't accounted for in the price, when that price is established through basic laws of supply and demand. For example, if a corporation's factory emits significant air pollution and results in a high incidence of upper respiratory infections in the nearby town, then a disproportionately high number of teachers and police officers are going to call into work sick throughout the year. Substitute teachers and replacement officers will need to be hired, and that cost will be borne by everyone in town when they receive a higher tax bill. The corporation owning the pollution belching factory, that means, gets the full amount of money from the sale of its products but doesn't pay the full cost of producing them, since the broader public is shouldering part of the pollution bill. Another example might be a company underfunding its pension accounts. The business may eventually shut its doors deliver final profits to shareholders, and leave retired workers without the monthly checks they've been counting on. Then the government may have to step in with food stamps, welfare payments, and similar to make up for the shortfall. And in the final tabulation, the general public ends up paying labor costs that should have been borne by shareholders. Externalities, it should be noted, aren't always negative. For example, the iPhone does a pretty good job of displaying traffic congestion in real time on its map. That ability costs money to develop, which Apple invested, and then they get cash back when an iPhone sells. Apple doesn't receive, however, anything from those drivers who don't purchase an iPhone but still benefit from it. Those who get to where they are going a bit faster because everyone who does have an iPhone is navigating an alternate route. More, everyone benefits from cleaner air and when traffic jams are diminished. But again, that part of the benefit, which should channel back to Apple to offset its research and production costs, end up uncompensated. Whether an externality is negative or positive, whether a company's bottom line rises or falls with it, a strong argument remains for broad corporate responsibility wherever an externality exists. Because these parts of corporate interaction with the world aren't counted for in dollars and cents, a broad ethical discussion must be introduced to determine what, if any, obligations or benefits arise. The enlightened self-interest argument. The third kind of argument. An enlightened self-interest in the economic world means that businesses take on broad responsibilities because, on careful analysis, that public generosity also benefits the company. The benefits run along a number of lines. Corporations perceived as socially engaged may be rewarded with more and more satisfied customers. Tom's Shoes is an excellent example. For every pair of shoes they sell, they give a pair away to needy children. No one doubts that this is a noble action, one displaying corporation vision as going beyond the bottom line, but it's also quite lucrative. Many people buy from Tom's because of the anti-poverty donations, and those customers feel good about their footwear knowing that a child somewhere is better off. Organizations that do good for society or the environment may attract top employees. Since job satisfaction goes beyond salary, workers choosing between offers might pick a company that make a positive impact. However, this idea also works in reverse. Some companies with bad reputation struggle to hire, even with high salaries, because people don't want their name linked to them. A curious example. Some people are willing to take a lower salary than they'd earn in the private sector just because it's the CIA, while others refuse to work there even if it's their highest paying offer, also because it's the CIA. Organizations that take the initiative to self-regulate for social good may avoid stricter government-imposed rules. For instance, a chemical lab might go beyond the legal requirement by sealing toxic waste in 2 leak-proof barrels instead of 1, ensuring greater public safety. This proactive move benefits the environment and could also protect the bottom line by preventing regulators from pushing for even stricter measures. One basic question about enlightened self-interest is, are corporations making money because they're doing good deeds, or are they doing good deeds because it makes them money? In terms of pure consequences, this distinction may not be significant. However, if the reality is that social good is being done only because it makes money, then some will object that corporate social responsibility is twisting into a clever trick employed to maximize profits by deceiving consumers about a business's intention. That would be all for my report. Thank you.